chase vehicles were scrambling, with the exception of the Suzuki. He stayed just ahead of Clark and Chavez, as if fixed behind the backing cars. There are three types of counter-surveillance: technical, passive, and active. Technical counter-surveillance meant normally electronic means, such as the target using radio scanners to listen for short-range radio traffic or surveillance detail. It was the most rare form of counter-surveillance, as encrypted digital radios were the norm these days, and picking up transmissions was nearly impossible without special equipment and a good deal of time. Passive counter-surveillance was the easiest to employ, as it required nothing more than the target's eyes and knowledge of what kinds of cars and methods would be used against them. The Renault target vehicle would be employing passive counter-surveillance measures, as it was certainly full of men with their eyes peeled for a tail. But passive was also the easiest to defeat, because a large surveillance fleet could move their vehicles around in a